Welcome to the SoundCloud Creator Forum and today's panel, Streaming in the DJ Booth. We've assembled a fantastic lineup today to share insights and perspectives on the powerful tools being offered to a new generation of digitally native DJs. We've delivered on our commitment made last year at ADE that SoundCloud is now the most widely integrated streaming service across all DJ performance partners. We welcome some of those partners here today to talk about their products alongside some industry experts to share and discuss, who are these next-gen DJs and how they're using music tech to redefine electronic music. So I'm going to just hand it over to the panel to introduce yourselves a little bit about yourself or the company that you work for.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Cardini. I'm a DJ and label owner. I run two labels. One is called Correspondence, the other one is called Disky. And I've been DJing since a long time, going through all kind of formats.
Hi, I'm Phil Morse. I'm the founder of Digital DJ Tips, the biggest online DJ school in the world. We have 23,000 students and quite a lot of them are starting to use streaming. So I've got some stuff to share with you about how.
Hi, I'm Austin. I'm a co-founder with my brother of a company called Future DJs. We have over 50 schools and 800 students who are really under 16 years of old, and we're teaching them one-to-one or paired directly in schools, and we have accredited courses which they all learn from.
Hi, my name's Jay Cunningham. I'm from Den and DJ. Den and DJ have made and announced the first hardware to integrate streaming without the use of a laptop. And so very excited to be able to talk about more about that today.
Thanks for having me. My name is Matt, and I work for Serato, Serato DJ, Serato Studio. You guys probably have heard of Serato before. And we have integrated with SoundCloud very early on with streaming. And I work with the artist relations department, so I work with a lot of our artists to help create content and help people out.
Great, thank you. So Matt, let's start with you actually. We launched with Serato at the end of last year, but for the benefit of people in the room that are kind of new to the idea of streaming integration with software and hardware, can you just talk about kind of what it is that Serato have launched with SoundCloud, and also kind of what led you as a company to really kind of be first to market with that type of integration?
Sure. I mean, so we announced last year around December, I believe, with SoundCloud, and it was really interesting. We've worked with streaming before. We worked with Alvaro when he was with Pulse Locker, which was the first streaming service that we integrated with, and that was a really mind-blowing time. At the time, I don't think I myself understood the potential of what it could be. I didn't even have a Spotify account or never really even used any kind of streaming service at that time, and I was a big user of SoundCloud, of course, and I always thought this would be amazing to be able to stream, music, especially SoundCloud, where you are able to upload music that you've created and then play it. That was always the kind of the ethos of Serato. It took away the need to press, a 12-inch record so you could just play it in the club. Serato allowed the ability just to make something, play it that night, get instant feedback, and kind of refine your sound that way. And I think. I think a lot of us have DJed for a long time, so we've bought music. So that whole shift in the way you think about ownership of music, it's something that the next generation doesn't even consider. I think we can all agree on that. And it's a total shift in mindset from, pressing records, making records to streaming. And I think SoundCloud, the integration that we've got with SoundCloud it's the kind of the perfect integration for a creator, someone who makes music, who wants to play their music and have it, directly available at any time, along with a huge catalog of popular music. I think as soon as we even used Pulse Locker the first time, I remember going out and using that, I had two laptops, left my traditional DJ laptop in another city. I was in LA, got asked to do a gig, and I needed a bunch of disco music, and I went and searched for all the favorite disco songs I knew. I was able to get them all and made a crate, and I went out and DJ'd all my favorite disco tunes that night, and I was just like, the freedom that it provided was incredible. And I think that's something, the convenience that the next generation can look forward to, and we now have. It's now a reality.
Fantastic. And Jay, what have Denon launched, and how does it kind of differ to what Serato brought to market?
So with the Prime series, the SE5000 and the M, the two players, which have been around for about 2.5, coming up to 3 years now. When that was initially or conceptualized, probably sort of 4 or 5 years ago now, the thought was, as a forward-thinking, innovative company, it just made sense to put kind of Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Whether the plan was to use it directly for streaming was there, because that was still quite early in its stage as it was. But how that's now transpired, working with companies like SoundCloud, it's now... Take this a little bit back, as the DJ has evolved, going from vinyl to CD to digital, with digital bringing laptops, and now, it's partly moving away from being freed from that laptop in there as well. So what we've done with the Denon DJ Prime series is to integrate these features and functionality within the hardware. So, we've been doing some great demos this week with SoundCloud, and it's amazing to actually see it happen now. I know personally I've been a SoundCloud user for well over 10 years and enjoyed, great results with it. And now to be able to access that from a player and be able to kind of search for either through your own playlists or curated playlists as well, which, I have to say is really going to be the kind of future of the streaming side of it. If everyone has access to the same 50 million songs, I believe it's down to what that platform can transform that into an experience to be able to give people the crate digging experience or the curated playlist, whether you're a mobile wedding event DJ or whether you're a club DJ, you're a DJ looking for disco or German hip hop, whatever it may be. So to be able to kind of get that access to a song, and we were doing demos with like just someone's 4G phone. These were downloading in 3-4 seconds. I mean, it was really taking nothing. We've had a lot of conversations with DJs in regard to kind of how they view streaming, and this is before any announcement. And there was the biggest fear that every DJ had is, the Wi-Fi is not that great, and they're right. The infrastructure, I still believe, and we still believe, has some maturing to work with, but we're working on the hardware side to ensure that once that infrastructure is in place, there is hardware ready to be able to do it. But so far, it's been very, very positive. We've had, when you download the track or select the song, you download it in full before you play it. So once you started playing that song, if the Wi-Fi or the 4G connection goes down, there's no problem at all. You've got that song cached in there as well. In addition to that, we've looked at ways so that it will analyze the song to create your beat grid. You can put all your performance data in there, like hot cues, loops, and all of that information is stored locally on a drive, so that when you take that USB and then go off to another gig, all that information is instantly there the second that file is finished downloading. So that coming out of the gate, I think, has just quashed a lot of the big concerns that people have with streaming. So, we've had the insight to be able to put this technology in the hardware, and obviously going forward, everything that we release is going to have that in there as well, to continue and working as a collective with everyone involved in streaming for DJs to make it a successful platform for people to use.
Great. And so Jennifer, those were some of your concerns originally, weren't they, about kind of the confidence in Wi-Fi and things like that?
Yes, this, and also like what's like if you lose the connection, how many offline track do you have? Because like if it's gone for a couple of hours, then and you have to DJ 2 or 3 hours, you need more than 20 or 30 or 50 songs. So that's is basically the main concern for me. It's like if there is no internet, how many offline songs can you access? Because you'll also like to be able to be versatile and adapt. So like, for example, 50 songs for an hour and a half can be really short. Yeah. So that was a concern. And also as a label owner, the other concern is how do the remuneration is going to work, and how is it going to work? Like if you access, like it was with a locker, you pay a monthly fee and then you have a certain amount of track, like how is this going to work? So that's is also a concern. I mean, for me, the streaming I was really happy when we started to get USB, because before I tried Traktor and I tried Serato, and I'm sorry to say, but USB made it fun for me to DJ again, because it was very spontaneous and I didn't have to go with my laptop. And so I would be more curious on knowing how the hardware is gonna modernize and change for the streaming, because I don't see myself using a laptop anymore in the club. I find it super convenient to.
Yeah, those are the things that you want to see solved by streaming
exactly,
integrations. Is like convenience.
I mean,
and being
for me,
able
it would only work if I don't have to bring a laptop, obviously. So
yeah.
It would be the only way. I mean, I tried with my phone.
Yeah.
But I'm too scared still. Like you don't want to have a bug or something in front of a large audience.
Right.
I mean, I think a lot of us, when I talk with colleagues and other DJs, like we all a bit scared still.
But I think, people felt the same when CDs came around, and with digital, when there's that change in there, like I personally don't believe that you're going to have, this guy's a streaming DJ and this and the other.
No, but
I think it will be incorporated as
I've
part.
never personally been afraid of change. I mean, CD was great, but it became better and better when the hardware got better and better.
Exactly, yeah.
Same with the USB.
Yeah.
The first USB, the Pioneer 2000 to the 2000 Nexus 2, there is a huge difference and improvement that makes that it's nicer. I'm not afraid of change, but I think that the quality I want for when I perform, it will take a moment for hardware to catch up on this. So that's why I think a lot of us are not ready yet, because we fear that the performance we want to give there is still a little gap between the performance we want to give and where the technical part is, if you understand what I mean.
I mean, the streaming for DJs, number one, is obviously very new, in relation to, all the different medium that DJs have now as the ability to DJ with. But I don't believe it's also going to be for everyone right now. If you look at specific demographics of DJs, so since we announced one of the betas a month ago, your mobile event wedding DJ have literally been going crazy for this, because these guys are taking 80 to 150,000 songs to a wedding because they need to appease, a 6-year-old up to a 60-year-old. Mm-hmm. So if they can take their kind of core 1,500, 2,000 songs, but then they have the ability to be able to access the most obscure song that you could think of.
That's great. I mean, the freedom, I don't deny it. I just think that, and also I don't think that all the DJs are scared of this. Like most of the DJs that I have connection to, we all very excited of improvement. Like if you take Richie Houghton, for example, he was always super excited of new technologies, and we all waiting for this. I mean, I'm very into the streaming. I just want to make sure that it works well and that I can perform as well as with a technology.
And that's totally understandable. And I think there's also an infrastructure part as well that's important, that needs to evolve. You need Wi-Fi and full 5G data to be as reliable as electricity is, to add that confidence for it.
The hardware to be reliable if this is not working really well.
Sure.
Like that's my biggest fear is like, like when you dream that you don't have the other song, or it's not working. It's a little bit this. Yeah, I have those dreams as well. I think we all have those dreams.
We all suffer from that.
Very stupid dream, but.
And Phil, what are you what are your takeaways from your students then that are kind of using this, and that you're sort of teaching them or demoing some of these integrations with?
I think one of the things that we haven't spoken about so far is music discovery. Yeah. Because to be able to discover music and playlist music is just how we do it. And everyone in this room does it. Most people in this room do it. It's just that we won't go and DJ with that music yet, because we're exactly as you feel a lot of the time. But everyone discovers music in that way, right? And most people tend to playlist it, certainly people who love music. So they won't just discover it and listen to it and stumble over it again in the future. They'll playlist it. Those playlists are becoming record collections. A playlist is a collection. It's not you don't have to own the physical thing anymore, and you can't a lot of the time, most of the stuff on SoundCloud, for instance. So to be able to then take that collection and put it into DJ software is an absolute game changer for DJs that's what we're seeing. And also a lot of people who wouldn't normally think of themselves as DJs. So I'll give you a good example. My wife, who met me in a club, in a DJ booth while I was DJing, she said, your website's shit, and we can help you sort that out. And I thought, you're different. We're now married. She's still quite critical of a lot of things. But anyway, she's always...
Website's better, though.
The website's improved a lot, yeah. She really watches me and thinks, I want to DJ. I'd like to do this. And every time I go away, actually, she says, oh, you're not here. Give me something to do. Set something up for me. And it always ends somewhere around the conversation with, well, how do I get my music into it? You haven't got any music. Yes, I have. I've got hundreds and hundreds of tunes on Spotify. I've been collecting them for 10 years. She's a runner, so she's always out running with the headphones on. She's like, I've got loads of playlists, but that's not your music. Well, what? She actually stops comprehending what her music actually means at that point. And I think, the serious point here is, if she could plug that in, she would have a go. And that's for the whole industry, that is the big gain here, I think. Everyone who thinks they're not a DJ but has got a great record collection can suddenly DJ with that collection, and they don't care. They don't care if it goes wrong. But they're not scared because they're young. They're too young to be scared about anything, apart from my wife. She's not young anymore, but younger than me. She might watch the recording. They're not scared because they're playing parties. They're not playing big clubs. They're playing parties. They're playing. It's all back to mine, and yeah, exactly. So they're not. It doesn't bother them if it goes wrong. If it goes wrong, someone else will plug in their iPod or whatever, or I'm showing my age now, their phone. So that's the big thing. I think it's more people doing it and people thinking that they can actually plug the music that they think they own, because they, in all senses, do, into the DJ gear for the first time.
Yeah, and there's a real level of simplicity now as well, I think. Some of the products and the software that are being launched are like straight out of the box, that you don't even need to do settings and go into, Windows to set things up. You just plug it in a device and it's within minutes you're playing things from your collection.
One of the things that I do feel, though, which I totally agree with you here on this one, is that it's a bit like email. Remember when email first came and no one really knew what it was? And certainly you'd never send anyone anything important with email because you just wouldn't, because it was just, what's this strange thing? Now it's everywhere. And the thing about email is it works on everything, right? It's the difference between email and a lot of digital technologies. It just works on everything. And if you guys, and if the DJ industry can make every service work on everything, I think people will start to trust it in the way that they trust email, for instance. And at that point, at that tipping point, it will cease to be, you won't need a panel like this because it will just be the norm. And I think that's what we have to work towards, everything working on everything. The services that are being plugged in need to be ubiquitous, and the hardware manufacturers and the software manufacturers have to make sure. And I think it's coming, right? It's a bit of a commodity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Austin, what you're doing in this space, in the education space, is like super interesting. Sort of talk a bit more about kind of what you're actually doing and going into the schools, and also are you seeing the same kind of challenges that Phil's talking about with kids who've got collections somewhere on their phone or somewhere else, and they're trying to bridge the gap between their library and getting it onto the decks, basically.
Sure. So just to say as well, I'm really here speaking on behalf of future DJs and all of the students in all of the schools, not as, say, a professional DJ DJing in the club, multiple grounds down and, without Wi-Fi. So just back in the schools, and go back to really what, say, our mission is, and that is to get young people into music in the first place. So, and the way we find that works is through DJing, music production, we think MCing and podcasting, because a lot of young people, so our target age range is around 9 through to 16 on the most part. Pretty much everybody listens to music. They have these amazing Spotify playlists, YouTube playlists, SoundCloud playlists, and then they don't engage with the music departments because there's like this huge divide between curriculums in schools and actually the music that young people and our students want to listen to. So I think that's sort of just to set out what we're here doing. But from, I would say, almost an operational point of view and a distribution point of view. So we have an office, there's 10 of us in there, and we are deploying curriculum and lesson plans and music through to 40 tutors who are out on the ground in schools, and we kind of say they're out in the cold face, and that, you know, once they're out there, there's little that we can sort of do when you're in the school, and you know, teachers and students are asking you questions, and parents, and so anything that, I mean, sorry, I should also say there's around 130 tutors who are trained, evaluated, and ready to teach in schools. So we have this question, it came up recently, about how do we need to get the students new music, because they have weekly lessons and they're moving at an incredible pace, and they definitely want to play the newest stuff that their friends are talking about. We discovered was actually a way that people really like to find music was, so we can talk about all the platforms, but was through their friends. That was really, really important. So we ran surveys with all of our students ahead of this to see what they were saying, and that was one of them, which was really quite nice actually to see that there's still this human connection and element. So we asked this question: how do we deploy music really quickly through all the schools, through all the parents, and to all the students, so that they can have fun, engaging lessons each week? And what you were talking about there, with it being integrated with the hardware, and obviously we've been talking a lot with you guys, just sounds amazing. You know, you think that they could turn up to a lesson and they've got a whole new playlist with lesson notes, and not necessarily with a computer. I think it's a really cool. I personally not a big fan of DJing with the laptop in clubs, personally. I do quite like USBs, although I would say whenever I do kind of events for friends where I might have to play all sorts of stuff, a laptop is the best thing, and to be able to search for music is fantastic. I think we've all been there in that situation when someone asks you for something and you just don't have it. It's not the best. So so that's what I come back to, is like, how do we make them have really engaging lessons, really develop their musical education, and have strong outcomes? And something like what we're talking about here seems to be really ticking those boxes. So we're
What's
excited.
their kind of attitude towards the way that things are currently set up for them, in like perhaps having to download, and maybe it's the first time they've ever even had to do that? I mean, what's their kind of reaction to that?
So what we noticed is that there was two sort of real barriers amongst the students, and they were cost and knowledge. And same with the parents; they're just not sure what to do, where to go. And so there's, of course, a few default ones. You mentioned straight away Spotify, and I think because most parents have a Spotify account, the assumption is that you could just use that to to DJ with. But I got this probably is quite contradictory to everything we're saying here, but it was actually 47% of students, around half, wanted to download something. So they want to have. I don't know if it's about the security to own it, maybe to know that it's always there, but they definitely wanted to have something. And a large amount using SoundCloud, though, which I thought was great. Really, really encouraging. And of course, YouTube was a big discovery, and also, the number one place to think that you could actually, take that music and DJ with it.
Cool. And what about the sort of typical user of Serato, using software but using predominantly laptop and maybe controller as well? Or you tell us a bit about your kind of demographic and your user.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think you guys will make really valid points about USBs being, kind of like laptop not being in the DJ booth and so forth. That's for a lot of people, for sure. I think there's an equal amount of people that do like using a computer, and I think you kind of touched on that too. And I, as a user of a computer, I have no problem with it in the booth. And I think for a large majority of early users of DJ technology, people have a computer already. People often don't have a controller, but they have a computer. Everyone these days has access to a computer. And I think like what we've done at Serato is we've made sure that you can use Serato without any hardware at all. And I think that liberates people a lot, and gets them into using, into DJing right away. With the streaming, obviously, is exactly what you're saying. It's like now you've made that accessible, that music accessible. I think what you're talking about when you talked about how people are social with music, how they discover music, the way that SoundCloud has the ability to share on your stories, on Instagram, I think that's incredible. I think that whole sharing of music is something that we didn't really have growing up in the same way, and I think that this next generation is showing us all these new innovative ways of music discovery, and SoundCloud's right at the pointy end of that. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say to Jennifer, as a label manager, are you thinking about, how you might need to market differently to people who are, 16 or under, or
I think we're already doing it.
Yeah.
Like we started to create a playlist to. We're already doing it. I mean, I don't know if we're very efficient at it, but now we're already doing it. Actually, I have a sister. We have 20 years difference, and I was at her place, and I was like, wanted to check something on her laptop, and I was like, "Where is your laptop?" And she was like, "I don't have a laptop." And I was like, "Why?" And she was like, "I don't need a laptop. I have a phone." And I don't know, like this really, I was like, okay. And I think slowly we're going to a generation that don't need to own music. So I think as a label, we also need to adapt to this. And I think we're a bit late, but we're trying to catch up.
And are you seeing this the same like with young people who perhaps have moved on from ownership of computers and laptops? They've kind of bypassed that. They're going straight to phone and iPad.
Yeah, we see a lot of students. Just have phones, and so that's one of the sort of initial questions is, can I use a phone to DJ with? Also, schools have a lot of iPads in the schools, so I think that's also like a really interesting integration. And laptops probably not. I think I share this
but it's
similar
also very
view.
convenient. I mean, I started to use my phone to DJ as well, and like you just have all the music on the phone, and
that's plugging straight into the
you
CD
plug it in the
CD deck.
CDG, and
Yeah.
it's. I mean, I don't do it all the time because it's a reflex, and I haven't got the habit. But it's true that you always have it with you, and it's like super easy, and you can also like download the music directly. I mean, it's very convenient. It's just, I think, for people that are in this industry since a long time, it's just to create new habits, and that take time sometimes.
That was something to touch on. Is like there's always a lot of resistance to change, and you must see this as well, Phil, over the years that you've been running digital DJ tips, but also DJing yourself. Where does that resistance come from? Is it lack of education, or is it bad ingrained habits?
So the interesting thing about resistance in DJing, I think, is when we started DJing, and I'm talking about the generation in the late 80s, early 90s, it was very new, right? Even though it was on vinyl. You look back now, it was very new. It's like this mixing thing, and even that wasn't new, as we all know. But it felt very new. It felt like something. It felt like a DIY culture for the first time. It felt very forward-looking, and I'm sure you felt this back in the day as well. It felt like we couldn't survive 6 weeks, never mind the rest of our careers in this industry, because this industry didn't exist. So it had to be forward-looking because there was, the future was not written. But I think what's happened, strangely, is it's flipped and become very conservative. And I think it has to move that way. I think things do move that way. I think a stamp gets made and people run with it, but it's almost like an elastic band around a post. You run with it further and it keeps trying to pull you back, and it needs someone else to put a new post down. And I really feel that. And I think the ownership of music and the way we discover and share again, the one-to-one stuff is the key to that changing. It's the key to everyone knowing that in their pocket is the ability to play an amazing DJ set anytime, anywhere. And the resistance is coming from people who just don't get it. And I'm right on the edge because as a teacher, I have to stay fresh and stay with it. But also, I've always been the geek who can kind of get this stuff before other people. no offense to other people, by the way, it's just I'm a geek. And, our audience are often in the camp that says, I'm never going to do that. And they get quite vocal about it. I will never do that. I need to own my music. It's too important, which I totally get. But
you also still get people now that like I still want to buy records, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I mean, I still buy records now, but I love the digital age, and I'm excited about streaming.
It's a bit like a Kindle and a book, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we've probably all got Kindles, right? I'm quite happy to read the majority of my reading stuff on a Kindle because I can't be bothered filling my bookshelf up with books that might not actually be, very good. And it's the same with music, right? You might be a lot happier playing a wide variety of music, and you might end up playing it for 6 weeks and never wanting to see it again. Much better to buy the stuff maybe that you really love and cherish the stuff you love as a kind of memento. It's almost like a souvenir of the times that you have with that track that you've been streaming for the last year. And yeah, maybe that's the way it'll go. Jeff.
Well, there's also audiobooks as well, so there's a third option in there to read your books.
There's sheet music as well, but we're going outside the realms of the discussion.
I think ultimately you can't fight consumerism. The younger generation, whether they be 4 or 5 years old or whether they be 11 or 12, the majority of them, don't. The concept of owning music has already been established here. It is very different now. How that takes place and moves forward, looking at the title of this panel, streaming in the DJ booth, I think if you talk to a lot of club festival DJs right now, I don't think it would appeal to them, in all honesty, because the reality is that a lot of these guys are playing promos, they're playing music, they're given to them by friends that would not be available on those platforms. SoundCloud obviously is an exception to that. But that's now, and I think I totally understand where you're coming from, Jennifer. The hardware has only literally just been announced 3 months ago. Sorry, that streaming capability is in there, and I think there's a long way to go for not only hardware but for the providers as well to be able to find new experiences for people to discover new music, and on top of that, the infrastructure around to be able to support a stable, Wi-Fi environment. I actually think certain clubs, if they're very serious about supporting this, they should be getting fibre lines directly in there. So there's absolutely no question whatsoever about the Wi-Fi ever dropping out.
So here's another thing, though. It's about the idea that you don't have to have with you everything you need, right? That it's all going to come over the wires. So there's nothing to say that we can't have cloud lockers where we keep the music that we own. But actually, we're just turning up at a club and logging in. We're putting in one username and one password, and then everything's there. All our playlists from all the streaming services, from SoundCloud and from Spotify and everything, plus access to our cloud locker where the stuff we own is kept. Oh, and that's the way it happens. And the actual fact that it's remote ceases to be an issue, as you're saying, Jay, because electricity is in every DJ booth. You wouldn't expect that to go off, and if it did, you'd expect the music to stop. Mm-hmm. So it only has to be a matter of time before that becomes the case with a Wi-Fi connection or a fibre connection or whatever.
Yeah, we're seeing more clubs and festivals kind of building the infrastructure and bussing in, even like satellite technology to have strong enough connections, because broadcasting's just become so popular, whether it's Boiler Room or Tomorrowland. So as you're saying, it's encouraging the clubs to get kind of more the wired in, fiber optic. But also, from Denine's side, like the resistance, as a sort of brand, kind of moving into the space of not just streaming, but kind of really trying to get your product into the clubs as well. What kind of resistance do you encounter from the DJs that you work with?
So from the streaming side, I mean, obviously the streaming side of it is very new, but it's a feature on top of that's incorporated into a plate that is already very feature rich. Yeah, exactly. It's not being sold as a streaming piece of hardware. It is a DJ media player that can play multiple USB devices, can do key syncing, key matching. It can do all these wonderful things. And guess what? we've now got Wi-Fi in there as well, and here's a beta of SoundCloud. You can log into your SoundCloud account. It's about giving people the options. Like I say, to my earlier comment, I don't believe I'll be a streaming DJ. It'll be like I'm playing this set, and you know what, I'm feeling the vibe, and actually I want to drop a sort of kind of Latino house thing. Right, let me quickly log in, bang, I'll get that, I'll just drop that in, but the rest of my set is already done on hardware as well. It's about giving DJs the choice and the option to use it if they want to. How it gets adopted, I mean, no one's got a crystal ball as to how this will look in 3-5 years' time, but I'm very interested to see that.
I was going to say one thing I think is kind of interesting. A good friend of ours he's a very successful tech entrepreneur in the US, and he talks about in the next sort of 10 years, entire continents coming online with 5G and what that means for a future of many different industries. But in regards to ours now, I think that's super exciting to imagine, like potentially millions of people who didn't have an access to music before now having an access to music and engaging with music in a way that they couldn't because they can't maybe buy traditional instrumentation or instruments, but actually something like this which is accessible.
Yeah, there's access to DJing now through the integrations in a way that wasn't really possible before. And we talk about really trying to sort of democratize this kind of space.
Our students are predominantly male. It's very, very skewed towards men still, and it's just how it is. It's something. I mean, our students. One thing that we realise is there's an awful lot of beginners out there, and they're all 30 plus. They're all 30 plus men who suddenly think, I never did that DJing thing. I want to have a go. That's the people who buy courses. That's the people who, because the younger kids don't really need someone to say, here's how you do it. Past that age, because once they hit 20, 21, 22, they're out there doing it, right? So I think unless you get them really early, and the people coming back into it now, no girls were DJing when, unfortunately, with exceptions of course, but the exceptions prove the rule. It's 95% male.
Yeah, so people can say, we don't need, like, the last thing we need is just more DJs, but you'd probably agree that, democratizing it to gender and diversity is like really a really positive thing.
I think that for many years, it has been a thing that girls can't be nerds, they can't be digging for music, or they can't be geeks, and I think that this is completely wrong. And I don't know, like you're basically saying that you have more male students than a lot more, yeah. Yeah, I don't know, like it's that would be another panel, I guess.
I mean, I had a DJ.
How we make sure that boys are geeks and how we make sure that girls aren't. I mean, that's a complete new topic. But I think if you take time, girls are as open, if not more, to music, technology, science, anything.
And performance.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, on an educational level, this is still not how the norm is. Like, girls are not supposed to be interested in technology and cables and
I think that's one of the things we're sort of really seeing in that. I think we are at the front of I really hope being able to reverse that trend.
Yeah,
and that
me too.
Yeah.
But can I borrow a mic? One thing that is just it's almost contrary to that, but one thing that I think, Jay, I know Jay quite well, and Jay's an avid collector of music just for the sake of collecting it. I think that's a little bit... I do it too, so I can say this. I think that's a little bit sad. I think you get to a certain age as a male and you think, I'll just start collecting this, and it's a slippery slope.
From a creative aspect, looking at kind of acapellas and loops, sounds, percussion, stuff that you can start adding in, so it doesn't necessarily have to be like a full song, but it might be like a drum kit. You're starting to border and talk into the kind of production element, but, every producer's a DJ. Every DJ's a producer, and you kind of have to, and they have been married, for many, many years now. So I think, the creative options to be able to add flavour to your sets to help people be more creative and stand out above and beyond, DJs that are out there is, it's just as important whether it's streaming or it's physically on your USB.
Absolutely. So thank you. hope everybody's found this, really interesting and educational. And I don't know if anybody's got any kind of, predictions or hopes for the future of streaming in the DJ booth before we wrap it up.
I think it's the next big thing. I think it's going to change our lives and beyond music. I honestly believe that this cloud thing is not going away, and we'll all be, for better or worse, living in the cloud. And privacy is now dead, unfortunately. Everyone, surveillance. Facebook knows more about us than we do, and it's just the future. And it's very hard to grasp, and it's scary. But creatively, I think it's going to open stuff up. I really do. I think it's very, very exciting. I think DJ needs a kick up the arse at the moment. It's been stuck in its ways for a bit too long, and this could be it. So,
yeah, just for me, it's laying the foundation for the next generation. That's what we have to invest in, the next generation of DJs to keep this art form going. We have to provide a platform for them to do it on.
I was just going to say, it's not really much secret. We're really on a mission to make this accessible to hundreds of thousands, millions of students around the world. And we're always asking the question of how do we teach a student in this country? How do we teach a student in this country? And how do we deploy the music to them and all the study programs? And I think, we're always really, really listening to them and keen to work very closely with industry to ensure the most seamless distribution and integration to get people into music. And I think that's something that's good for everybody if we have a whole new generation bigly into music.
Great, thank you. Okay, all right, well, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks.